Hello and welcome back to another episode of KSP POV, where we play Kerbal Space Program in first person. Today we've got a bunch of different things to do, and a bunch of new things to unlock and try out. So we're going to be doing a lot of testing of new command pods today, so we're going to just kind of jump right into it. A lot of the stuff is going to end up getting fast forwarded or edited down just to keep our time constraints decently, but we've got a lot to do. So let's get started first by checking our contracts as always. See if there's anything that we can achieve while we're doing the things that we already want to do. And as always, I grabbed the science experiments around the KSC, but other than that, I don't really find anything. So now we go into the R&D stage because we have so much science from our successful trip to Minmus and back. So go ahead and unlock some better landing gear, which the landing gear doesn't really matter to me. It's more about the wheels. We can go ahead and unlock some scanning tech, and then we see the command capsules, and we go ahead and just unlock both nodes at once to gain access to the Mach 3 cabin, which will do us good. It'll be able to hold 3 Kerbals, and that should do us well. Take a look at the heat shield, and I also I spent some points on the recycling aspect and the attack life support mods. And I go in here and I look at advanced construction. I get it simply because I want to get these actuators, the robotics that came with the Breaking Ground DLC. So now, the first thing that we're going to do, and we're going to spend a little bit of time on this, is we're going to take these 3 little satellites that we placed in orbit a long time back, and we're going to adjust their orbit so that way they can cover a much wider spread. So we go ahead and gain access to the satellite, and then we come in here in the probe control room, because this still is KSP POV after all. So it's been a little bit since we've been in the control room, actually. Come to think of it, we've been doing a lot of manned or crewed missions, and with that we get the control of being in the actual cockpit as opposed to down on the ground. But we didn't put any cameras on our satellite, so there's nothing that we can really see visually except all the information that we have. And so now what I'm going to be doing is first I'm going to adjust the inclination, make sure that that is right, and then I'm going to bring the apoapsis out to about 200 to 300 kilometers, and then circularize, and we're going to leave our satellites around that orbit. Oh, excuse me, we're already at 200 kilometers. We're going to take that and bring it up to, I believe I ended up going up to 800 kilometers. Oh, we'll see here in a second. But so we're going to start adjusting our satellites so that way we can have a much better communications network and coverage over our planet. They're sitting too low, too close to the atmosphere, that I don't think they're going to cover very much. So we go ahead and time warp to the maneuver. And then I realized I had forgot to actually plot it into flight computer. No, actually I didn't forget to plot it into flight computer. Excuse me. I didn't have access to flight computer until just now because I regained connection with the KSC. I forgot that I had some trouble with that during this mission. But yeah, since these are probes, we have to have contact with KSC, and since these are the communication network that we're gonna need to rely on in order to have that functionality, we're gonna have to do some tricky maneuvering as we pass by KSC. So I cleared the target. The target was the MUN, since the MUN sits at close to a 0.0 inclination to Kerbin. So I targeted the MUN and used that to adjust my inclination based around. Now we're just pushing ourselves out very slowly because we have a tiny engine, and I believe I limited the thrust. I'm not sure why I did that, but maybe I was looking at it and it was going to be too short of a burn, and sometimes you can get inaccuracies when it's too short that way. So I probably just tuned it down so that way there wouldn't be any kind of problems with that. And so now I go ahead and plot a maneuver to circularize at our apoapsis. And then we go ahead and time warp our way to it. Yeah, see, 800 kilometers, that's what I got. That makes a lot more sense. So we come to about 3 minutes to the maneuver, and the Kerbal alarm clock goes ahead and kills it, so we time warp again to get faster. And then the maneuver activates, or flight computer activates the maneuver, and we're circularizing. So this is going to be the orbit that I'm going to bring all the other satellites to. It's 800 by 799. So it's nice, a nice circular orbit. Very low eccentricity, so that'll help. Just trying to keep all the numbers as minimal as possible and as even as possible is going to help us out a lot. Honestly, it's the orbital period that is going to make the most of difference between each satellite. So we just got to keep that in mind. But yep, so I go ahead, and now that my orbit is set, I go ahead and select the second satellite. And I remember, I forgot to do this for the first one, but I remember to do it on this one, is to rename it, so we have an idea of which one is which. We go ahead and name it, and we make sure that it's a relay. Then we come on in back to probe control room, and now we're just kind of fly through everything because we're just doing exactly what we just did. We're bringing our orbit out to 800 kilometers, and then from there we are going to adjust ourselves so that way our next maneuver, the one to circularize, will be the one that puts us in the correct place in relationship to the first satellite. So go ahead and speed up time, get ourselves to our maneuver, and there we go, we got it out. And so now we're just adjusting the orbital period so it determines at which point we're going to circularize our burn. So I find the point, and it's several orbits away. I have to circle the planet a few times in order to get exactly where we want to get to. And then once I circularize, I check and see that two satellites are in communication with each other, and they are. So I go ahead and move on to the third one. So now with the third one, I start to have some control problems. The ship kind of seems to be following its own direction. I'm not really sure what to do with that, but I kind of just let it be, and I just keep pushing on to what I'm doing. I focus on getting my inclination correct. So then it fires, and then I look at the nav ball, and I see that we're spinning, and I'm not really sure why that is. So I go ahead and time warp, and I try to kill the maneuver, and so I kill the maneuver. And then so we're going to be like, alright, let's try this again. Coming here, I don't have access to my SAS controls. And then when I physics warp, it slowly brings itself over, but not enough. But I eventually time warp to get myself to the right position. So we go ahead and we plot in our maneuver, and we come close to it. We're pointing anti-normal, I believe. We're pointing anti-normal. And then it fires, but I see that once again we're spinning. I'm not really sure what to do, and then so I'm trying to cancel the maneuver, and it's not letting me, and I'm trying to cancel the flight computer, and it's not letting me. I take a quick peek to see what's going on outside. So I kill the maneuver, and it keeps firing. I go through and I hit the click-through blocker mod that I have, which clears our input locks, and that clears it, and I can delete the maneuver, but I can't turn the engine off for some reason. So instead, I stage the self-destruct mode. We probably could have left this satellite out. The communication dishes and satellite dishes still worked. It just would have been off orbit or possibly in an escape trajectory. But we packed it with explosives for a situation where if we didn't want the satellite anymore, we wouldn't need it. So I'm pretty happy with that. Even though we lost some equipment, it was a successful test of the self-destruct feature. So now for some reason it didn't save that satellite that I just put up, that I just made. It didn't save it in the build, so I go ahead and I build another one, but this one has a scanner sat on it. And I do use Ampere instead of just eyeballing it and being like, that's enough battery. I actually use the tools to tell me whether or not it is, and thankfully from the first try it was. So now we're going to attach on both the Mach 3 pod and the landing can. However, the heat shield that we have is too small. I don't feel comfortable with that small of a heat shield, but we need more science in order to unlock the other ones. So what we're going to do is we're going to do some experiments around the KSP, and we're going to go ahead and double this and use this to test out the new command pod, the landing can. Now the landing can has two versions. It's got the circular landing version with some storage, and then it has this long rover version. So we're going to test out what it's like to drive this rover to see if we like it or not. Because if we like it, then we might take it to another planet and drive it around. So instantly, I don't like it. We're at an angle. I can't access this computer screen right here, this one on the right. For some reason, the buttons aren't working. And so I only really have this screen on the left to kind of put the stuff through. The SAS does work, so that's nice. And this screen is in the middle, and it's at such an angle it's hard to read. And now here's the second seat. I can reach that screen, but there's not really a lot for the second seat to do. It's got all the action groups, and it's got the energy stuff, the instruments to read out, what kind of electric charge we have and everything. And then there's some buttons up there, lights, some warnings. It seems very bare bones of a command pod given everything that we've been doing thus far. However, I think its biggest feature is just the fact that it has such large windows that you can see out of. So that might be good. We'll see how it goes when it comes to creating rovers and what we're going to want to do. If anybody has checked out my YouTube shorts, you'll see one of the rover designs that did end up going through, and that will be coming up in a few episodes. Probably not the next one, but probably the one after that. We'll be roving on a different celestial body. So now I just want to go grab some science real fast. So I just load this up with every single experiment we've got. One of each anyways. Oh, we didn't do the simple satellite experiment. Nope, I just noticed that. Oh wait, yes we did. Here we go. So now we put a little way to connect it, and we put the simple satellite on there as well. So that'll give us a simple atmospheric pressure reading as well as a simple thermometer reading. So now check this out. This is our first time in the Mach 3 cabin, and we've got quite a lot to kind of look at here. We've got this nice big docking screen to the right. We've got all our action groups there. So I go ahead and I start setting up the screens the way I want it. I'm not entirely sure how I want to set this up. If you notice, I have duplicates there. I switched to the secondary seat. There's nothing to do here. I switched to the third seat, and the only thing we really got is control of the communications with the KSP, which is from the Chatterer extended mod. So we go ahead and launch. We forgot to turn our throttle up, so we didn't go anywhere when we staged, but once we got that up, we quickly start moving. We go ahead and turn ourselves over to the side. This time we're going west. We're going to try to aim for the mountain range that is just near the KSP. So yeah, this is a pretty simple, pretty standard, we're not even orbiting. I don't think we even leave the atmosphere, because, we didn't want to risk not having a heat shield. But the chutes deploy, and then something strange starts happening. I start spinning, and I'm not hitting this at all. There's no need to spin. I'm not needing to dissipate heat. But then I start really spinning. I mean, like really, really spinning. I was sped up just before. This is the more the real time of how fast I was going as I was playing, and I'm starting to get nervous, thinking that we're gonna just tear ourselves apart. We're just gonna spin ourselves apart. And so I go and I fire the engine a little bit to try to regain control, but all that does is make me go faster and wilder, more out of control. I didn't put a decoupler, so we're bringing the engine down with us. There's nothing we can really do to lighten our load, and we're coming down pretty fast, over 100 meters per second vertically, and then a little bit horizontally. But we go ahead and fire the engine to kind of mitigate that a little bit. We're still about a kilometer above the ground, but we need to kill off some of the speed. Otherwise, our little journey for science will just end up with dead Kerbals. We can't have that. If we're going to kill Kerbals, we should at least do it off-planet. So we landed not quite in the mountains, but close enough, and it was in a biome that we hadn't grabbed the experiments for, so all in all, it's a mission success. There we are. So close. So close to the mountains. So yeah, so now we have science, but we're gonna go ahead and do another set of experiments, because there were some left over when we did the first one around the KSP, and now we're going to use this mod, which is another A-set mod, to rove around with. But I can't figure out the wheels. I don't know why the wheels just don't seem to make sense to me. So I go ahead and I get rid of that whole back end and just build out a metallic structure beam rover itself. So yeah, we didn't quite test out the mod because we could have seen all the other stuff that it had to offer, but we still at least will be able to test out the cabin to see if we like it. I would like to try to use this rover since it's its own mod. It's self-contained, and it's got a lot of stuff to work with, and especially since I have the science to unlock it now, we should really figure out how to make it work. I had to readjust my parts because I had yet to upgrade the SPH, and so I had to take off some parts to make this fit. But already I'm starting to like it more. We've got a huge screen here, we've got big open windows to see from. There's nothing that I really have to go too far at an angle for. And then in the second seat, the scientist seat, is like the control board. We got all of our action groups down there. I can control the brakes, I can control the thrust limiter. It's certainly the place to be. And now in the third seat, there was literally nothing I can do, and in this fourth seat in the center, I just have this big old screen ahead of me. If depending on what I had on that screen to the right, I might be able to see it, but all in all, it's just kind of being centered. So I go and I try to get to a new biome, and I wasn't aware that there was this little ravine here, so when I went speeding towards it, I got stuck. But thankfully, once again, we accidentally wound ourselves up in a biome that we didn't have the science for. So it was, again, mission success. But yeah, look at that. If I had made it just a little bit smaller, a little bit shorter, I think we would have made it. But now we've got the science, and we can unlock that heat shield that we needed. So now we can go ahead and go back to our ship. Once again, it didn't save, so we're just gonna rebuild this satellite. and then rebuild the launcher for it. So yeah, so now we've got the Mach 3 command pod. Up here we're gonna put some life support, and this is only going around Kerbin. It's not going to any other planet, so we don't need too much life support for it. So, yep, so we go ahead and put on that heat shield. We don't have a decoupler big enough to kind of fully seat it, so we just use the biggest we have, and it works. We're now using these larger size tanks and larger size engines. We got the Poodle going. That's going to bring us into orbit. And then once again, the Pila engine just being the true workhorse of our program. I put in these solar panels to give us electricity, but because I shoved them too far into each other, they cannot deploy. I'm just gonna let you know that now. That didn't work out for us. So just be careful when you're clipping objects into each other, because sometimes they can mess up. So go ahead and put 2 cameras on there so we can see our launch, and then I have a forward-facing camera so we can see that we successfully deployed the satellite. So yep, so now the second time being in the command capsule, but this time we're going to be making orbit. So just try to get my window set up. Still unsure of the best layout for everything, so just playing around, working with stuff. I set up my cameras in the big window. I throttle myself up, and then I fire the stage, and I get to see ourselves lifting off. We are going to be heading north for this. Since this is a ScanSat, we're going to be putting it into a polar orbit. And we have the satellite dishes on there as well to just further boost our communications network. So now I'm just going to fast forward a little bit to the point where we have to stage our lower engine. And we go ahead and switch into the Poodle. We're pretty high. Not as high as I want to be. I want to get this to about 250 or more kilometers. So that way our scanner tech will work. So now it's just a matter of pushing out our orbit. It's interesting to see, if you look at that circle, you can see the 2 lines dashed across it, going diagonally. Those are the equatorial satellites that we have. So we're looking at the planet from a different angle than we're used to. So that's kind of fun. It makes it look like it's got rings, like Saturn. So there we are. We're in a good solid orbit. There's not really much else we need to do with this except for let the time pass, so that way our tourists spent enough time in space that they're happy. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, we brought along a tourist, so that way we can complete a couple contracts at once, make a little bit of money while doing the things that we want to do. It's important. So we go ahead and get, I believe this is Shepcan. Nope, just looked at the window in the corner. This is Herbal the Kerbal. So it's trying to, as you can see here, it's trying to deploy the solar panels, but couldn't. And then was going to go deploy the scanner and realized that if we were to ascend anymore, we could have broken that solar panel, and that wouldn't have been good either. So we just kind of fly ourselves, we RCS pack ourselves over the top of them, and then come towards the scanner. We go ahead and deploy it. Nice little animation there. And then we do its science, and so it's going to be scanning the surface of Kerbin. This is from vanilla, or maybe it might be breaking ground, but the scan tech is mostly a vanilla thing. This is not from ScanSat. We are going to be doing ScanSat missions soon enough, both on Kerbin and on Minmus, maybe the Mun as well. we're gonna go back to the Mun. There's still a lot of science to be collected, and there's probably a few contracts to work on. But for now, we're gonna focus on Minmus and Kerbin. So we go ahead. Now that the satellite is fully deployed and everything, we go ahead and stage it. And we check out our forward-facing camera. It's nice. We jump to the satellite itself and just load up the probe control room. I don't think we're ever going to need to control the satellite ever again, but just in case, we got the Kerbals on the ground tracking it, so we can feel good. So now it's time to come on home. We go ahead and point ourselves retrograde, and then we fire. We just it doesn't really matter right now, but we fire. We bring ourselves down to a lower periapsis while still maintaining our height, and then we adjust our maneuver nodes to come in at a low enough angle that we're not coming in too fast. And it doesn't really matter where we land, because we're not going to be able to land close to the KSC due to this orbit. If we wanted to try that, we would have to orbit the planet several times. And, you know, the Kerbal signed up for about an hour in space. There's no need to bring them there for 3 days. Go ahead and time warp. Get ourselves close to the maneuver. And we actually are in the atmosphere now. We're going to be burning a little bit more, but for the most part, we're going to be aiming to come down in one shot. So fast forwarding a little bit, because we were so shallow into the atmosphere, we went ahead and popped right on out of it before burning up, and we activated our maneuver. So now we're just going to point ourselves sideways, anti-normal, and jettison our engine and tank. And then, so now when we turn ourselves retrograde, we don't have to worry about coming back into contact with that because it's on a different plane than us. So that's good. So it does suck that my solar panels won't deploy, so I have to be very careful. I could easily run out of electricity on the way home and potentially spend some time tumbling. But since we're going to be going down in this pass, that becomes less of a concern. We ended up packing enough batteries with us, and we left the satellite attached to us long enough that we didn't run out. So now here's something that I'm really enjoying. I didn't have to spin that capsule at all. In the past few episodes, and even in the past series when we were using the Alcor all the time, I had to spin the entire way back, and it was always a harrowing journey. This time the heat meter barely jumped up. It barely touched even like a tenth of what we could handle. So kind of talked through the landing, but our parachutes deployed easily, and we arrived on the southern pole, I believe. And yeah, so now we have a new satellite up in space. We got a bunch of new command pods, like all these different command pods to kind of work with, and I'm glad that we got a chance to kind of test them all out, see which ones we like, and we'll figure out where we go from there in the next episode. And in the next episode, we're going to turn our sights back to Minmus. There's some things left to do, and I'm grabbing some contracts here which will be relevant to that mission itself. But all in all, I think that's where I'm going to leave this episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider giving me a like, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.